Hey guys, SoCal Val here. You are listening to the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast.
Welcome everybody back to another episode of the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast, and this episode is, well, it's a tag team special. I love my tag teams. If you listen to the podcast, you know I'm a big tag team fan. When I was growing up as a boy, watching or trying to watch wrestling in the UK. Obviously, we didn't have a lot of it until the late 80s, early 90s when Sky came out. But to talk tag team wrestling, I thought, who could I get on that would be able to assist with this and give us a vast array of knowledge. And we've got someone, amazingly, a multiple-time tag team champion, mainly in TNA with the great James Storm. We have Wildcat Chris Harris. Chris Harris, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. I'm so excited to be here. Always good to talk with my friends overseas. But you got the right guy, man. If you want to talk tag teams, I'm your guy, man. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. Thanks for hopping on for a little bit, taking up a bit of your time listening to a Brit talk wrestling. I don't know how that normally would be, but so Chris, a bit of thing for me. Like I said, I was a tag team fan way back. I remember people like the Rockers, Demolition, Powers of Pain, Power and Glory. Gone back a bit further since in the little libraries and saw a bit of rock and roll and Midnight Express. I mean, that was the 80s and 90s. What is your perspective of tag team wrestling in 2023?
Wow, we're jumping right to that. So I guess it's first I have to give you the general perspective on wrestling altogether. I've been accused of being one of those old school guys that doesn't want to change with the times, and part of that is true. I'm trying to learn because part of what I do now is a lot of coaching and helping out with my local promotion. So I have tried to learn to adapt, but I just feel like a lot of the art of wrestling has been lost. A lot of the art of tag team wrestling especially has been lost. But we do still get a touch of it today. I know it's not the same product that it used to be, but yeah, I mean, and it's kind of like you can hear it from the viewers when they respond. You can tell by some people still look at ratings, but for example, let's take the top dog, the WWE, the Bloodline. I mean, that's an emotional angle that they're doing. That's something that you're emotionally invested in. You have to tune in each week to see what's going to happen. It's not necessarily the matches, although the match that happens every few months that they build to, we're definitely wanting to see, but it's the story. It's the drama that's involved in it. And that's what I think is missing a lot nowadays. It's just sometimes it's just a spot fest out there. And, it's a bunch of acrobats. And, I'll go ahead and say it. I'm not a fan of that. I don't think it's not about what goes on in the ring. It's about when and where you place it. You can get away with half of what you see nowadays. And have a better product. But that goes with I'm assuming we would get to this eventually anyway, but my favorite tag team nowadays is FTR. Because they go for that old school approach. We see out of them what we used to see, and you mentioned the 80s and 90s. I mean, the basics and look at lo and behold, there's nothing flashy about those guys, but people love them.
Yeah,
they love them because they respect them and they take them on a ride in the match. So yeah, they're one of my favorites, and I've seen them have great matches with a lot of guys that I may not have heard of or not known, but it's still great matches. I just watched one. I think it just aired. I don't know. I'm always behind on my wrestling, but FTR and Juice. And
Juice and Jay White from 2 out of 3 Falls from Collision.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, yeah, it was a long match, and some people aren't into that. But if you can keep somebody for that long, and you can get into the match, then you're doing something right. And that's what they did. They took me on a ride. And I don't know much about those two. Certainly don't know much about their Japan experience. But since they've been featured a little bit with AEW, I've gotten to know a little bit, and they hung. Those guys had a magical match, and I loved it. So, I guess the original question was, I think, of tag team wrestling. I think it still exists, and I love seeing that in certain teams. But yeah, I think the wrestling as a whole, I think a lot of times we've just lost that. With the younger generation, they just have a whole different mentality, and unfortunately, a lot of them, I won't say all, but a lot of them, they don't want to listen to the veterans that know what works, because they were on top at one time. They made all the money at one time. So, I don't know. It's common sense to me. I mean, when I was coming up, I wanted to listen to the people that had been there and done that, because I wanted to get where they wanted to go. I never had that attitude of, well, I got another way. My way's better. I'll just do it my way. So, yeah, I think that's a lot of what's missing today. But I'm happy to see that it does still exist out there. You just have to find it.
Yeah, it seems to be showcased a bit more. I'm touching on Impact. I watched Slammiversary last weekend. It was I didn't watch it the next day. There are some tag teams in there that are amazing for me. But I'm a bit like you. I've had to get used to the new phase of tag team, however you want to call it. The new product. I'm very much a guy of an old school mentality, storylines, bit about the background to make that, because you need to be invested in the match in two ways for me. I need to be invested in what's going on in the ring, but what's happened in the circle, basically, to get to where we've got to today. That's what really, and that's when you touched on the bloodline, which was because you've got that cinematic thing that happens every sort of week that gets you tuned in. But then I went to Money in the Bank in London when they brought it over here recently. And saw the Usos, Roman and Solo. Now, the bit I have to get used to is the repetition of super kicks and bits and pieces like that, and because now I used to be of an old school where super kick used to end it. Now I see 50 a match.
Yeah, super kick was a finisher. I mean,
it was. But the point, you made a great point though, in terms of it's the whole. It's not just what goes on in there; it's the bits around it that I have to be invested in for me to watch that. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. So I am still old school, but I'm having to get used to this new way of wrestling, which is fine. It is what it is. But going back to basically what I was talking about, the 80s and the 90s, the rockers and people like that. When you put a tag team together, I know sometimes you get it thrown at you. It's not necessarily you and you get to choose. What do you look for in a partner? Is it someone that styles are the same? Is there a little clash of styles? How does it really work for you when you get a partner? Say, for example, James Storm, when they said, I know you had a lot of history with James prior to coming into TNA, but how did it work when you got paired up together?
Well, that's kind of a whole different thing, because when you look for something in a partner, I couldn't speak on that because I wasn't looking for a partner.
Yeah.
I would assume that when you're kind of have the idea of doing something in the tag team ranks, you would look at somebody with a very similar style as yours. I would think that would be the first thing you'd look for. On the opposite end, you could get somebody that has the complete opposite, so that you can cover more territory, more areas. Maybe you got a high flyer on one end, and then your partner is the big monster that comes in. Could be a different ways to look at it. In Storm and I's situation, yeah, we had both spent years on the indies and, kind of doing our singles thing. And, when TNA come up, of course we're excited and, this could be a big opportunity to get our name out there. But when we were involved in it, I think it's well known now, but we were actually in a match against each other in singles, which is what caught their attention. And so, we're thinking we're in, we got the contracts and, we're going to be big single stars, but you have to look at the big picture there. Got a brand new company. Obviously, you need a lot of names and a lot of superstars to get the eyes on the product. So that's going to be the main focus. You also have to build your younger generation, your younger stars, homegrown talent. And I guess we thought we would be part of that, but the thing is, there were just so many moving parts. I feel like if we would have been in singles ranks, there's a good chance we would have been lost in the shuffle. And I really appreciate that TNA and I'll name out like Jeff Jarrett and Jerry Jarrett and Bob Ryder. Like he doesn't get enough credit for what he did with TNA, but they saw something in us, so they knew they wanted us part of the company. They just didn't know what to do with us. So their idea was, let's just throw them together and see what happens. And to be honest with you, man, I mean, we adapted to where I think people obviously loved the tag team, but we were so different at the time. Him and I looked at each other like, you got to be kidding me. We're going to team up because, I'm the flashy kind of, I go out there and I mean, my work was really good, but, I was kind of the rah-rah baby face, I guess, going out there. And Storm himself was a big baby face. And we got both of us were coming up big in Nashville. We were two of the top baby faces around there. But this guy would go out in a, cowboy hat and shooting his pistols off. And, I was just like, there is no way I'm teaming up with this guy. But you got to also look at, if the company, if a big organization is giving you an opportunity and they have TV or they have pay-per-view, and they say, oh, hey, this is what we want. It's kind of like being thrown a gimmick, that you're not really happy with, but it's like, hey, I can either do nothing or I can try to make this work. And we've seen throughout history that most of those guys that have really jumped into that gimmick and really adopted it, and made it work, they've had success with it. And so that's kind of what Storm and I's attitude was. We were already friends, so that we had that going for us. But we were like, look, if this is what they're throwing at us, they want a tag team out of us, then we're going to be the best damn tag team there is. And we both had the same philosophy with tag team wrestling, going back to what we were talking about earlier. We were fans of the 80s and the 90s tag team wrestling. So even though I may have had my favorites in singles, I still love tag team wrestling. So if I was going to be involved in this, I wanted to go back and look at some of these tag teams and tag team matches that I loved growing up. And that was, both of us, we watched the Rock and Roll Express. We watched the Horsemen, Arn and Tully, Midnight Express. I'd even throw the Road Warriors in there. And then on the other side, the Hart Foundation, the Bulldogs. I mean, so there's just so many awesome tag team matches and just so much you can watch and learn from them. And that is what we applied into our tag team. And I'll go ahead and say this, that in 2002, when TNA started, I think we had a resurgence with tag teams, maybe like 98, 99. You had, because tag team wrestling was kind of on a decline, but, you got to give it to the Dudleys, the Hardys, Edge and Christian. They brought it right back up and with some of their matches. But then by 2002, on the other channel, which is all we had, WCW was gone, ECW was gone. All we had was a lot of singles guys that were being forced to team up, single stars, teaming up for a tag team run. And they may or may not have a title run, but within a few months, they're splitting and they're feuding. It just was gone. It just wasn't much to it. So when we came out, I think that's a lot of the reason we had the attention that we did, because early days, there weren't a whole lot of eyes on TNA, but the magazines were covering it. The journalists were covering us, but because we were doing what the other guys had done, and people were finding themselves enjoying tag team wrestling and like I said, getting emotionally involved, and they were having fun with tag team wrestling again. And it certainly didn't hurt that we had the connection with the fans. The fans really dug us and they were into us. And I think that really helped too. So our motivation was just, this is what they're giving us. Let's make it work. Let's go for it. And let's be the best tag team there is.
Well, you certainly think you managed to do that in most cases. Anyway, did you find yourself sort of looking at each other's moves and finding out, is there a way that we could implement this one with this one to create like a tag team move together using your separate move sets that you had?
100%, Adam. We definitely did that. I looked at some of his arsenal and looked at some of mine, and that's the thing. We don't see it a lot of time, and this is one of the things I coach. If you're in a tag team, when you tag in and out, it's not just let the guy go, tag, and your partner jumps on him. Do a tag team move. You got 5 seconds. The referee's counting you for 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Shoot them off the ropes, give them a double team, something. But what Storm and I would do is, not only when we would come in and out of tags, we would shoot them in to a corner, to a rope or something. Storm would do something, then I would do something, then Storm would do something and go for the cover. So it was kind of like a combination. and we would do each one of our something that we would normally do and just put it in, and it became so awesome. And the way I have to give credit to Mike Tenay and Don West, because they were really they talked it up. They were talking how this is a phenomenal tag team working a tag team style match. And yes, we definitely did that. We even did that with finishers. A lot of times up till that point, I was doing, this is just one example, but I was doing an elbow drop off the top rope. Thank God I stopped that. That would have killed me. But I was doing that a lot. And Storm was much more agile than me. He liked doing the Hurricane Rana from the top rope. So we decided, okay, let's put them together. He does a Hurricane Rana. You mentioned Power and Glory before.
How
they would do the suplex and then the splash. Storm would do the Hurricane Rana. They'd land right in the center of the ring. Here I come with the elbow. Boom, we won matches like that. So 100%. We did it for finishers. We did it for just in and out tags, just to, the continuity of the tag team. So 100%, we definitely did that, and I think that really added to what helped us get to the top.
Yeah, it certainly did. One of the things that I liked, and we touched upon FTR and their match, and what I used to like about old school matches was they used to cut, or maybe the heels mainly, cut half that ring off, prevent that, because it's all about the hot tag, right? And it's all about getting that part where you're taking that beating. And one of the things that I really enjoyed of that FTR match was they were literally cutting that ring in half so that other guy couldn't make that tag even if they wanted to. I miss that about, because you see, as you say, tag team wrestling now is more showcased now maybe than it was, because of AEW like showcasing it. WWE do it a bit, but there's more like trios, more so nowadays. It's more six-men and multi-man matches. But I do love that old school mentality of cut that ring off. Is that something that you still teach now as when you're a coach, if you're a tag team, to try and isolate that one guy and quick tags in and out and bits and pieces like that?
I sure do, man. Because that's something the kids nowadays, they don't think of. No. Because there's four guys in and out so much that, they're just four guys in the ring. And a lot of times we catch the referee not even trying to get one out. So it's almost like a tornado match is all the matches. But definitely, because let's take what I was saying before. If you do one of those tag team moves, when you tag your partner, you do something, a lot of times that last bump that is taken, it may be close to their partner. To where they could easily tag, and that people don't think about it. You have to stop that, and it's like you said, it really is like cutting the ring off. Every time you do some move, you have to make sure if they don't bump in the center of the ring, if they bump somewhat closer, you're automatically on them to pull them back to your side of your side of the ring. So 100%, man. You have to really look at it like that, because there's so many times that within an arm's reach you can make that tag. So you have to cut them off and keep them on your side of the ring. So you're within the arm's reach and you can tag in and out of your partner. So that is definitely one thing that I coach, because I do see the mistakes a lot where that doesn't happen. So I tell them, make that invisible line, from corner to corner, and you do everything in your little triangle there. So I love when I get to see that, and I hate to keep going back to FTR, but that's what they do. They will cut the ring off, man, and they'll keep you in their side.
That's exactly why I mentioned it, because I remember it from that tag on Saturday just gone, the collision match. One of our fan questions has come in, and they've asked if she's coming away from tag team wrestling a little bit. And he's a guy called Skulls Talks. He's been on one of our shows before, and he's asked, how did you end up being the wrestler in the Clay Davidson I Can't Lie to Me music video? He loves it. He said he's loving country music at the minute. He come across this only about a week ago, but he's really keen to find out how that happened.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, man. That's kind of so long ago that a lot of people don't even know about it. But it was a country music video. It was showcased and highlighted on CMT, and I think GMC, Great American Country, was a big station at the time. It was in my early days in Nashville, not too long before TNA, but a few years. And so obviously Nashville is a country capital of the world, so they do a lot of videos. There was an upcoming artist named Clay Davidson, and he had this song, and if you ever check out the song actually is really, really cool. and they were looking for a video for it. And the song can apply to almost any form of entertainment, but they wanted to do a wrestling theme. And so they actually came to some different events that we were having, local independent events. And I'm pretty sure they had their eye on somebody else. But they came and they were, I guess just watching the matches. I'm not sure what they were looking for, what matches they wanted, but the promoter down there, his name was Bert Prentice. And he got in touch with me after a couple shows, and he said they're looking for you to do this. And I was like, okay, whatever. I too, like your friend, I was not a country music fan. I just never tried it. So number one, I'm starting to spend more time in Nashville, so that I'm kind of hearing that. But also, I'm jumping ahead here. But once that video came out, I was watching CMT all the time because I wanted to see my video. Yeah. So during that time, I was seeing all these cool videos and songs, and I just really started getting into it, man. And now I probably listen to more country than I do anything else.
Really?
But yeah, at the time, I just wasn't. But I was in this, and I wound up talking to the producer, the director, after a show one night, and they told me they were interested, and so I was like, look, I've never done anything like this before, so you just lead the way. And so we worked it out, and worked out a contract, and I showed up on the set. The set was actually at the place where TNA first started filming. Okay. So it was the Nashville Fairgrounds. We called it the Asylum.
The Asylum, yeah.
But that a lot of the filming was done there. The in-ring stuff was done there, and so yeah, I just showed up, and I had my own trailer. And a lot of it wasn't really acting to me because it was so wrestling related. So I was just being me, and so yeah, I mean the video is just really cool, and a lot of it was in the ring, so that was fun. There was some locker room scenes, and they even had a scene where I was driving the car, which was really cool. We were just driving down Nashville at night. It was a convertible, so the wind was just blowing, and those scenes were really cool. And I'm putting the belt down on the girl's doorstep. So yeah, it was just a fun experience, man. And then I wasn't sure what would come of it, but once it came out, it actually went to #1 on CMT's charts. So yeah, I was just so excited about that. And one funny thing about it, so I'm trying to make my name in wrestling. I'd been wrestling about 5 years at that point, 5-6 years. And I actually reconnected with Clay Davidson, the artist in that. Reconnected with him just the past year or so. Really? And we kind of reminisced, and I told him this story. But so I'm wanting to be, I'm getting my name out there. A young guy, you want to be recognized. You want to be recognized. And I had just started WCW, so I had some TV exposure. But I remember going through a drive-through one time, and the lady in the window looked at me, and she goes, I know you. And here I'm thinking the wrestling, and she says, "You're in that country video." And I was like, "Yes, I am." And of course, I was excited. But I'm thinking I'm getting recognized more from the country video than I am my TV on WCW. So that was kind of cool. But yeah, it was a great experience, man. And that making it, not just making it in wrestling, but to be able to go back to your friends and family, your parents, and hey, I may not have made it big in wrestling yet, but I'm on CMT in a country music video. So I was passing out. I know I'm going to age myself, passing out videotapes of the thing, and so it was awesome, man. It was a great experience. Yeah, I'd love to kind of go back and look at that once in a while.
Yeah, he was saying to use the kids' phrase that he used now, it's a banger of a track, apparently, which means it's good. I'm gonna leave it.
Sure was, man.
We'll decide back to TNA minute. Obviously, multiple-time tag team champion, and we're going now into a phase in some instances in the WWE and in AEW where titles are finally getting that recognition a little bit more. We see lengthy reigns as championships now, and as you say, the storyline's got to be right around it for that reign to make sense. But say, for example, the first time that TNA said to you, "You're getting the gold." What was that? Did that feel like to you a bit of justification that they've thrown this team together, they put a team together, and you're being recognised, and it's hitting the right notes, and you're now justifiably the tag team champions?
Yeah, it's weird. I look back on that first time, and I don't even know if if I knew what had happened that first time. Now, it's almost like some of the later title runs meant more. But we knew we were getting attention. We knew that it was becoming evident that the TNA was had faith in us to run with the tag team division. And so the first time we had it, I'm sure I was excited, and probably had not really hit me. And even when we won it in the match, the surprise on our face, that's kind of how our reaction was on camera. But a lot of that was behind the scenes too. It's like, we're the NWA World Tag Team Champions. And the more I started thinking about it, I'm like, this is the same belts that the Rock and Roll Express held, and the Horsemen and Arn and Tully and the Road Warriors. I mean, we are, no matter what anybody could take away from us after that, we are in the record books. We are in the record books as the NWA Tag Team Champions. And so that's what really meant a lot to me, the lineage of it and the history. And, maybe a lot of guys don't look at it that much nowadays, because, it's belts are just seem to be used as props a lot of times.
Yeah.
But it certainly wasn't a prop to me back then. I mean, that meant a lot to Storm and I, and we carried it around with some real pride. And the more times we won it, it almost became so much more important each time, because not only were we showing a young, just a young, eager team to win it the first time, but as the team grew, the appreciation of it, I think, grew. So each time we won it, it was just like, we're on top again. We belong here. This was meant for us. So, very proud of that.
Yeah, definitely. So, winning a tag team title as much as you did shows how good you guys were and how much faith TNA had in you, because you wouldn't keep getting the gold if they didn't think that you weren't ready. Question from actually one of my best friends. Actually, he's out tonight, but he texted me about 2 minutes before we come on, and he said, "Can you ask Chris Harris if he wants to book you in a fatal 4-way tag? So you're not a traditional tag, so we're coming away from the traditional tag." He said, "He's my mate. His name, my friend James, and he said, can you book? So he wants one past tag team that you want to put in, a current one, and then maybe sort of an up-and-coming team, maybe someone that you coached, or an up-and-coming team." Now, I'm guessing the current one's going to be FTR, just because of
probably
that. And then a past one, and maybe you could add maybe another current one, but definitely a past one in there as well.
Wow, there's so many from the past that I watched. I don't know if it's because there's so many similarities with FTR, but I may have to go with Arn and Tully.
Yeah.
I just one of the matches that stands out, and I mean, I don't know why it's not like I'm promoting this or nothing, but I always seem to run into a SummerSlam match, SummerSlam '89, I think it was the Hart Foundation and the Brainbusters, Arn and Tully.
Yeah.
And it was the opening match, and it was just such a good match, man. And I don't think people really thought there was going to be much to it. It was just an opening match of a big SummerSlam card, and but man, what a classic tag team match. So a lot of me wants to go with the Hart Foundation. If it wasn't Arn and Tully, it'd be Hart Foundation, because I think there's a lot of similarity. Arn and Tully very similar in their styles. If you had a contrast, it would be maybe Arn being the power guy, Tully me more to the finesse guy, but definitely on the other side. Brett's the execution and the scientific guy. Then you throw the Anvil in there, and he'll power you down. He'll just run you over. So it would be one of those two teams, Hart Foundation or Arn and Tully, whether it's the Brainbusters, Horsemen. Wow, an up-and-coming team. That's really hard, man. Yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing I could do is probably go with something that I'm more familiar with, like a local team around here that we got going. And and nobody on your side would probably know. We have a really cool. I'll throw their name out just in case you ever hear from. But we call them the Strays.
Okay.
We got a Dakota Wolf, and we got a Mad Dog, David Tyler. And the organization I work with is the Northern Wrestling Federation. It's out of Cincinnati, Ohio.
Yeah.
But I've really enjoyed what they're doing, and they're heels. So I like a lot of the the brunt force and a lot of the heel tactics and the the rough edges. I really like that. So I think you put guys like us, you put guys like us in there with the Hartzer, Arn Tully, and then maybe a team like this, which I know you can't relate to, but that would be really cool. That reminds me of one thing. There was a booking. This was several years back. This may help with that question too. So hopefully James will appreciate this. But there was a booking. It was a convention several years back that it never wound up taking place. But the idea was to bring old school with current, which was kind of what Storm and I were with some of the future. And they were going to have Demolition. They were going to have America's Most Wanted. And then they were going to have the Young Bucks.
There's a triple threat for you.
And so I thought, that's really cool of bringing, 3 different generations in there, to kind of, and I think the Young Bucks probably would have worked a match that night. But yeah, that was kind of cool. I was really looking forward to something like that. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. But yeah, I mean, it's really cool to kind of, the fantasy booking, I guess, thinking of, taking some old time. I mean, there's so many people I've thought of, with Storm and I, what we could do with some of those tag teams of the past. So, yeah, I one of the guys, they're still current, but a lot of people ask me who would I like to wrestle now, besides FTR, and it would be Gallows and Anderson, the Good Brothers.
They're brilliant. They're brilliant.
Yeah, I would love for Storm and I in our prime to be able to have a match with those guys. I think that could be really good. I mean, a lot of people, they look at Gallows as kind of a giant, not to diminish him, but him and I are about the same size. So
okay,
it would kind of be cool to have, Storm and I against those two, we got evenly match up. So that's some real good fantasy booking. And of course I got those guys trying to talk me into it all the time, trying to get back in the ring to have a match with them. So, you never say never in wrestling, but probably not.
You've answered 2 other questions in one then, because someone actually asked me, who would you want to face now? Which you kind of
okay.
And the question is a return on the card, and you've said unlikely, but never say never. So that's 2 other questions in one, which is great. Now we sponsor. Actually, funny enough, I'm talking to Tag Team Wrestling. We over here, the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. We sponsor wrestlers and wrestling companies. Now, one of the wrestling companies we sponsor is in Wales, and their former one half of their former tag team champions. And the name, you talk about America's Most Wanted being one of the, that name is brilliant. Well, their name is Beers and Beatdowns. That's a fantastic team name. I think that's a great. Anyway, one of their guys.
I love that.
It's great, isn't it? So
Storm would really appreciate that.
Yeah, I think he would, wouldn't he? Try and get him booked over there or something to go and see him. But anyway, one of their members of the team, he's named Dangerous Danny Owens. He basically said he thought that the AMW was one of the best best teams, in the TNA history. I'll get the word out. Best teams in TNA history. But he does ask if you actually, before, and I know you kind of mentioned you were doing singles. Is that what you preferred other than a tag team, or was it just a case? But I know you said it was throwing at you, but would you prefer to be a single if it was not there at the time with you and Stalk?
Well, yeah, if that opportunity hadn't come to us, then sure, I would have preferred singles. And I think in both Storm and I's mind, we knew we could run with this tag team, and we were doing something good, so there's no reason to stop it. But there was always something in the future where we wanted to see what we could do in singles. I think that idea is always with anybody, but I had a talk with Bully Ray one time. We were just kind of hanging out, and I think it was around the time we were starting to look at a split between Storm and I.
Yep.
And he was one of the guys. He told me, we were friends, and he was like, it's not a bad thing to have a career as a tag team wrestler. And I guess I maybe that's something I didn't want to hear at the time, because I was like, man, I know I can do it on singles. I know I can do it. But he was just trying to get in my head to let me know that, hey, it's not such a bad thing. You can be a huge success. You can make a lot of money. You can be on top of the cards in a tag team division. And those guys have obviously proven it. And maybe because, they did in WWE product, they they did a little bit of a start and stop with those guys. You know, they break them up, put them back together, break them up. So I think those guys obviously realized that they were probably best together. And who knows, you know, Storm and I, maybe if that would have come full circle, maybe we would have wound up back together, which, you know, we did many years later. But yeah, so that was always, I guess, the vision in the long run. But we were 100% into the tag team. You know, we were not looking to run this for a year or two and call it quits. You know, when we saw it was working in wrestling, you go as far as you can, you know, until you feel like it can't go anymore. And I'll be honest, there were talk, you know, within a year or two of splitting up the team. They even did a few things on TV where they talked about splitting us up. And you know, Storm and I being the young guys, and you know, the whole idea of, you know, listening, you know, do what you're told and keep your mouth shut. You know, we still had that mentality, but we felt so strong in this that was probably one of the first times that we spoke up. And I can remember talking to Jeff and Jared, his father, who was very important in the company. But we just told him, we said, man, we really feel like there's life left in America's Most Wanted. And we really feel like we can go with something like this. And to be honest with you, you know, Vince Russo, he was in charge of the writing at the time. And I'm a Vince guy. I love Vince Russo. But his track record is, you know, have a successful tag team. Let's split them up. They'll feud, and then we'll see what happens. Well, the unfortunate thing is, a lot of that, see what happens, you get lost in the shuffle. So I did not want that to happen. And we were at the top of the card with the tag team, and maybe only just a couple reigns in as tag team champions. So we really fought for us, and they supported us. So we kept going. And then there was another time, I think we were about to renew our contracts, and there was talk of splitting us up. And that was when the talk was, okay, what can we do to liven this up? You know, if you know, if we feel like, you know, if they're thinking, you know, maybe there's a split. And that's kind of when the talk was about the heel turn. And we decided, you know, hey, we've been baby faces for years. Let's give it another try. And so we kind of turned the cheek a little bit. And man, we dug into that because we became assholes. The people, I think, they were so upset that we would turn our backs, and not only turn our backs, but align ourselves with someone as dastardly as Jeff Jarrett, you know. So it was a complete package there. Then we add Gail Kim to the package. So it was fun. And we had, that was probably some of the most fun we had, was being you know, the rule breaking America's Most Wanted. But yeah, we wanted to take it as far as we could. And, you know, who knows, maybe when we did split, was it the right time? Was it not? Who knows? You know, we'll never know that answer, but, you know, it was just kind of like, okay, let's see what happens here. So, but no, we were gung ho on the tag team thing. We wanted to run as long as we could.
Yeah. And I think you had a couple of sporadical returns for the last couple of years to see to Impact now, as it's now gone. And we said this before on these shows, we've had quite a few Impact guys on, and the trajectory for Impact now is literally like this, which is so good to see, because I used to love Impact Wrestling. When we used to get it over here, they used to put so much into their live events over here in the UK, and we went to see it hundreds of times, myself and Andy. And I'm really happy that Impact are doing that upwards after so many. They have been literally like a roller coaster, haven't they? You know, you know what I mean? But it's and I'm so happy for them now. They've got so much great talent on that roster. It kind of gives me, and although we couldn't really see TNA when it first started over here, because obviously in the UK didn't get a deal for a while. But I get the vibe of the old school locker room now, in the sense that it seems to be young, hungry, want to prove a point to people. And that's could only be good things with TNA in the future, and hopefully it'll Impact now. And hopefully they'll keep on that upward trajectory. And maybe another America's Most Wanted reunion will happen at some point in TNA, in Impact soon. Final question has actually come from one of our co-hosts, Dave. He was meant to be on this tonight, but he's got to do daddy duties. Unfortunately, he's got his
okay.
To look after, so
it happens.
Yeah, it happens. Yeah, he says your Mount Rushmore of tag team wrestlers is, and it's up to you.
Oh man, that's tough. You know, there's so much talk I hear nowadays. You know, when they talk about the greatest tag team out there, and the Road Warriors always comes up.
Yeah.
Because of, just the effect they had, really, and they were on top, and they were just they were larger than life kind of guys, and they'd go in there and they would just demolish you. But and I'm sure they were heavy money makers. I don't know if they'd be on my top, and I think a lot of people think I'm crazy for that, but I'm just looking more. I would look more of I love the Hart Foundation.
Yeah.
The Horseman style, the Arn and Tully. Hell, I'd be dumb not to put myself on there. So,
where's America's Most Wanted on that list?
Yeah. And then, nowadays, the FTR's got my attention. When it comes to 2023, they're the ones I watch. So, if I'm trying to put all phases in there, I don't want to make it all 4 old school tag teams, but man, I already gave you 4, but the Rock and Roll Express, it's hard not to put those guys on there. They just, throughout the 80s, they were just, the crowd reactions, it's just hard to imagine those, unless you were there and felt it, or unless you were invested on TV every week, wow, it's just hard to explain how just the fans were so behind them. But that goes for the Road Warriors tour. Man, that's hard. I gave you a lot there. It's hard to narrow it down to 4, but
that's fine. I'm happy with that.
I'd like to put us up there. I know we didn't probably have the exposure that a lot of the others had, but for those that watched us and kept up with us, hopefully they they enjoyed it, and maybe put us at the top of the tag team ratings.
I'm sure they will. I say I loved America's Most Wanted, and I did like Beer Money as well. That happened after I met James at TNA with Bobby Roode a little while.
Yeah, it's funny. I got asked a few times, throughout the years. I guess you probably hate Beer Money, because it's like because there was more eyes on the product.
Yeah,
sure. So Beer Money was a lot more known, and I was like, you got to be kidding me. That's my favorite tag team.
Yeah.
I was best friends with Bobby Roode, and Storm and I, of course, were best friends. So it's like my 2 buddies that are very talented and can work are put together. Hell yeah, I'm going to watch them, and they're entertaining. You add that to it. They were probably more entertaining than us. But I love Beer Money.
I thought they were great. It was I was lucky enough to meet them. They were surprised that I had their hoodie on. I don't know if because they didn't know if it was available in the UK. But it was a really, shockingly enough, it was raining on the day that we were meeting them, which is unsurprising. Quick final question, Chris, before we wrap up. You mentioned the crowd reaction, and my other co-host Andy has said, "What is the biggest pop that you've heard from the crowd? Not necessarily for you, or maybe for you, but when you've been out the back and someone has come out and there's just been this massive, they call it the Road Warrior pop right now, where you get this reaction. Do you ever recall one that stands out for you?" This
won't surprise you, because it's everything you just said right now. If you're talking about me being in the ring and hearing something coming out, it was the Road Warriors.
It was, yeah.
There was a TNA event in the Asylum days, and there were 3 or 4 of us tag teams in the ring for one reason or another, and the Road Warriors were making their debut. And when they came down to the ring, it's not that I didn't believe the Road Warrior pop thing before. I just hadn't seen them in person a lot of growing up. But good Lord, man, the way the place erupted for that, I was like, okay, I've experienced the Road Warrior pop legit. So that was probably one of the biggest. But as far as if I'm in the ring and hearing somebody come out, that was probably one of the biggest. Just some of the experiences I've had, like just the biggest pops. I mean, they were, a lot of the the tag team matches that we had. We had some banger. There you go, banger.
There you go.
We had some banger matches with Christopher Daniels and AJ Styles, and we were actually the heels at the time. Titles were on the line, and we had beaten them for months. Months and months. And we built up to this one final match, and can't remember what pay-per-view it was, maybe a Slammiversary, but I can't remember. But it was the night they took the titles from us.
Mm-hmm.
And those people were just so ready for that. And AJ and Daniels, they had the moves, man, and they put a good sequence together for the finish, for the final pin, and the place just erupted. And that really stands out to me. It was when we were getting beat, but I tell you what, if you're a worker and you appreciate good wrestling, you know that sometimes the greatest feeling can be laying on your back, because anything that gets that crowd to pop like that, and get them to, they're having a good time and they're with you. That was actually one of my favorite moments, just hearing the reaction of the crowd.
Yeah, it was amazing. And for me, I mean, obviously, I remember, I vaguely remember SummerSlam '92. LOD come out on their Harleys with Paul Ellering. So I wasn't at that point. I was 8, so I wasn't quite understanding of the pop term.
Yeah.
So the ones that are familiar for me when I've been there was, and this is not tag team related, unfortunately, but Brock Lesnar when he come back to WWE after the day after WrestleMania. I was in Miami that night, and I've never heard something as loud, and since then that I've been actually until Money in the Bank. There was 2 actually. There was when the Usos pinned Roman, Money in the Bank, and actually when John Cena come out and surprised the crowd. And my son was at the barricade. So he's 8. So it was his first ever event he's taken to, and I saw he had his earphones on because obviously the pyro. And I said, and he stands, because obviously you stand behind the aisleway to get the tag, didn't you? From wrestling, you stand in the entranceway bit, and I didn't know he was there. And music hit, and I turned and looked at my son, who looked at my girlfriend. He was like, oh, and he was just like, that moment for him made. But the pop that he got there was just, I've never heard anything like it. But those are the 2.
Sometimes those surprises really work, man.
Yeah, I remember when TNA signed Kurt Angle, and I wasn't there. Obviously, it wasn't live over here, but we saw the video. That was when the internet, you could just about get it. And I remember listening to that, and I was just like, holy hell. Like that video package that played. And even when they signed Christian Cage, that video with 10-0 played, and he come out, pulled his hat off and all that stuff. And it was great. But anyway, Chris, we're going to wrap it up. It's been fantastic talking to you this evening. Why don't you tell the people, you said about the coaching, tell us where they can do that, if they can find you on socials, and if you're available for bookings, how can they reach you?
My socials are Twitter is at AMW Wildcat. My Instagram is at AMW Wildcat Chris Harris. I'm also on Facebook. Those are the best ways to get a hold of me basically for anything. A lot of people have asked me about merch. I can refer them to my merch website. But yeah, I'm still out there, man. I still do bookings and appearances. Preferably no wrestling matches. You had asked earlier about the return. I mean, you never say, at least I never say retire in wrestling. Mm-hmm. It's just you just never know when the time is right to do something. So I'm very limited what I can do. But it was just last year you brought up with TNA, but just last year when I spent a couple months with those guys, and we did a little angle with bringing AMW back, and they actually talked me into wrestling on a pay-per-view. So I mean, to be able to come back and do it for that company, I loved it, and they were looking to protect me. And when they came up with the idea of a 10-man tag, I was like, well, I can't get any better than that. So that's a lot of the reasons I did that, and to be able to stand next to Storm again one more time. So you just never know. But I still do. I still do appearances. So even in wrestling events, when they're having a show going on, sometimes I'll just be there just to meet the fans and sign autographs, take pictures. And nowadays the conventions are really big. I love that because we can do all that and not have to get beat up. So we could just sit there at the tables and talk to the fans and have a great time with that. So yeah, the conventions I'm big on. I love going to all those. Any appearances, or I'm even open to getting physical in matches, just not having one myself. So there's been many bookings that we've done where they booked AMW together, but Storm will wrestle and I'll be in his corner. So just all kinds of different varieties there that we can do. But it's the best way to get a hold of me, and I'd love to do that. But in the meantime, whenever I'm local, I'm doing I'm really very involved in our local promotion, the Northern Wrestling Federation. It's in Cincinnati. Please look it up. We got some great talent coming out of here, but I'm coaching them throughout the week, and then we're running every weekend. So that keeps me busy, and I love doing that. It's almost like my new love, and since I can't get out there and, here we go with the crowd reaction again, since I can't get that myself anymore, to be able to coach them and put things together, and then they go out and see what they're experiencing, that's kind of brought that drive and love back out, that passion back out in me again. So I love doing that. But yeah, and I love doing these, man. I mean, this was great to be able to talk to you, man. I really I haven't had one like this in a long time, man. A tag team related podcast. That was great, man. It was fun to be able to talk a lot about that and dig into the art of tag team wrestling again.
That's great. I really appreciate your time as well, Chris. I need to do one plug very briefly.
Sure.
Sunday, 3 days time, we have our shows. We're partnering with a company called Ignite Wrestling Pro over here in the UK. We're presenting our own show called Buckle Up. It is officially sold out, not a seat left in the building. We're not allowed to put another chair out. There's over 200 people going to be attending Sunday. We can't wait. We are showcasing the best of British wrestling talent. There's going to be an amazing main event. There is going to be an announcement on the show that will, well, I would say shake Ignite to its foundations, but I wouldn't know that. And there could be a possible hint of Buckle Up too, potentially in the works, but I won't say any more than that for now. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching or listening to the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. You can find us on Twitter at HTTBuckle or Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast on every other platform possible. But for tonight, I have been your host, Adam Cousins. That has been the Wildcat Chris Harris. We thank you so much for your time, Chris. Until next time, everyone, buckle down, stay safe. Good night.